How you build an army is the most important thing in a wargame. It determines which models you can buy, not just, oh, that's a nice model, but can I have it in the same army as another model that I like? According to an article that came out from Games Workshop today, there will be 70 new detachments. A previous article said 70 new and updated detachments, and the preview talk said 70 new. It's not being consistent, but it's one or the other, and the existing detachments in the codexes will still be usable. Each detachment will focus on a particular unit or keyword or unit type. We have seen that as a theme already in 10th edition. Penitent units in the Penitent Host. Pure Strains, Biophagus, and Aberrants in the Biosanctic Broodsurge. There might be an even narrower focus. Rather than an Outlander Claw, a Mounted Detachment. But detachments are not made equal. Each one has detachment points. This has nothing to do with the points cost within your army construction, so if you're playing a 2,000 point game, you don't spend 150 points on a particular detachment or 80 points on another one. They have their own different cost. Each detachment costs between 1 and 3 detachment points. In a 1,000 point game, you can have up to 2 detachment points. In a 2,000 point game, up to 3 detachment points. I would expect the detachments that appear in the codex to be 2 points. So they're basically unchanged and can be used in 1,000 point games. Maybe the Imperial Agents detachments are all 1 point. That doesn't mean you have to include 2 of them to play a 1,000 point game. You could stick with 1, but you could have 2 of the detachments, then you have specialized Ordo Xenos units, and also Imperialis fleet units. Games Workshop has said that the detachments with gentler rules will cost fewer points. So this is another way of balancing the detachments. If one of them is particularly weak, like the Penitent Host, the Brood Brothers Auxilia, they could be lower detachment points. When you're making your army, you can include the same unit or datasheet multiple times over, as we could in 10th edition. And this keeps the same 2 of the same datasheet in 1,000 point games, or 3 of the same datasheet in 2,000 point games that we saw in the 2025-2026 mission deck. Battle line units get double this, so 4 in 1,000 point games, 6 in 2,000 point games, as we're used to. However, there has been a change. Dedicated transports are not mentioned. Dedicated transports don't get double. That is a change not mentioned by Games Workshop. So in a 2,000 point game, you can only have up to 3 rhinos. Another thing omitted is 3,000 point games. This may have been dropped as a supported size. It wasn't in the event packs of 9th edition or in 10th edition, and though it was in the core rules, and it got 3 missions in the early Crusade books, that was 3 missions compared to the 1,000 point and 2,000 points, which got 6 missions each in the early Crusade books. There hasn't been support for 3,000 points since then. The Eye of Terror, 2026, may have Apocalypse missions, and that could be for 3,000 points plus. That's where your support for playing 3,000 points is, but they won't get more core rule support. When I've been playing, most of the time, people consider 2,000 points as a cap, and it generally is, because at 2,000 points, the board can be absolutely filled with models, and it takes 3 to 4 hours to play out the game, if you're playing quickly. But I know that there's people who like 3,000 point games. You might meet up with your friends every 6 months and play a 4,000 or 5,000 points per side game. It doesn't look like there's direct core rule support for these games. And while that does kinda suck, I don't see why you couldn't keep expanding this table out. Every additional 1,000 points on the side means you get another detachment point, and the unit limit goes up by 1. So in 4,000 points, you would have 5 detachment points. Each unit could be taken 5 times, or battle line units could be taken 10 times. Another point that's changed is the cap on enhancements. It used to be that regardless of the point size you were playing, you could take up to 3 enhancements. Now the cap is 2 enhancements at 1,000 points, or 4 enhancements at 2,000 points. As I like all 4 of the enhancements in the Host of Ascension and Xenocreed, that's good to know. But there is yet another kind of enhancement. Upgrades. Some of the enhancements will have the upgrade tag, which means they can be applied to non-character units. You may remember something very much like this in 9th edition, but there it cost a certain amount of points, so 60 points for the unit, and for another 15 points they could have this extra ability. Each ability could only be taken once. But in 11th edition, each upgrade can be taken up to 3 times. And it's like an enhancement on the unit, but you don't need to put the enhancement on a character, then put the character in the unit for the unit to get the benefit. If you look at the Eldar Corsair detachment, we already have that sort of thing in 10th edition, so this isn't a surprise. There's still a cap on the enhancements, but these upgrades, which sort of do count as an enhancement, count as 1/3 of an enhancement. Or rather, each upgrade choice takes up an enhancement slot, but each of these upgrades can be applied 3 times to units. So maybe in a 1000 point game, I could take an enhancement on my Canoness, and in a new Seraphim detachment, both of my Seraphim units could have an upgrade which takes up the other enhancement slot. If I had a 3rd Seraphim unit, I could apply the upgrade to all 3 of them. That's how it appears to work. Character roles have expanded, or rather redacted, back to what we had in 9th edition. I'm beginning to think that the people who wrote this really liked 2nd edition for the theme, but also really liked the rules of 9th edition. We've got unit upgrades back. We've also got characters being in 2 different slots, HQ or elites. You know how some characters already have a rule that they can join certain units if another character from a list, a specific list, is already there? Like the Locust can be attached to Acolyte hybrids or Neophyte hybrids even if a Primus, Magus or Acolyte Icon Ward is already in that unit. This whole process is going to be more formalized with characters designated as leaders or support. In 9th edition and earlier terms, the leaders are the HQ choice, the support are the elite choice characters. So a Primus, HQ choice, so they are a leader. A Biophagus, a support character. They were an elite choice. And you can have a Primus and a Biophagus in the same unit, but you can't have 2 leaders like a Magos and a Primus in the same unit. Whether you're a leader or a support character, you are still a character keyword unit, so all the triggers off the character rule and anti-character abilities will apply regardless of whether it's a leader or a support choice. There has been no mention that you need to include a Warlord. There doesn't need to be a character leading the force. Interesting if so. The idea of a Warlord has been kind of reduced in relevancy in 10th edition. Very occasionally there's a stratagem that applies to killing the enemy Warlord, or you get bonuses to fight against the enemy Warlord. Most of the time it's a formality you go through that you have included a character in your army and they are the Warlord. With no mention of a Warlord, say there is still a Warlord, I would assume that a leader character is required. So you couldn't have an army like the Biosanctic Brood Surge that is led by a Biophagus. You might need a true leader, not a support character. Again, like 9th edition, you need HQ choices, you can't go around with just elite level characters. We'll have to see how that pans out. The doubling up of characters appears to expand which units can have 2 characters. Like the number of Adeptus Sororitas players who get excited about having 2 characters in their Celestian Sacrosanct squad, only to be told, by me, like right now, that in 10th edition, you can only double up in a Battle Sisters squad, the Battle Line unit. In 11th edition, expanding the places you can double up will let you live out your dream of having Junith Erewhita and a Hospitaller in a Celestian Sacrosanct squad for the ultimate defense ball. Probably. From the information that's here, there doesn't seem to be any limitation of only certain units will get this, or only the units where currently you can double up, like Acolytes and Neophytes but not Metamorphs, like Battle Sisters but not Dominions. But if more units can have 2 characters, we better brush up on our FAQ of what happens when there's 2 characters in a unit. Maybe target priority is fixed, maybe you have to lose the bodyguard, then lose a support character, then lose the leader. That would follow normal wound allocation, not relating to precision. Otherwise the FAQ is there for 10th edition. Maybe 11th edition will include it in the core rules and have an FAQ section in the core rules. Leader and support may be a keyword added to each character unit in an FAQ. I can see that all current units need to be updated, and this should extend to Legends units. I'm not as sure about the builder character of the Crucible of Champions in the Maelstrom book. Their custom rules may be short-lived, until they get revived in some new but basically identical form in 11th edition in another campaign book. Games Workshop giveth, Games Workshop taketh away, then Games Workshop giveth again if you pay them more money. Sometimes in 10th edition, and it's something that Games Workshop seems to have been annoyed about, Characters are chosen just because they're very cheap and they go and sit on objectives, like a lone dialogus, a minister and priest, a Clamorvus on the home objective using their aura of no, you can't deep strike within 12 inches. All of these are probably going to be classified as support characters, and you will need to attach them to a unit. Leaders can operate alone, so if you want Junith sitting on the home objective overseeing the battle and giving out command points, that should work. Of course, Junith is more points than a dialogus. So Games Workshop appears to want to narrow down the number of lone characters wandering around. This only applies to characters that join units. Lone operatives will not be affected. But it means if you want a dialogus in your army, there needs to be a unit for them to attach to that they are attached to at the start of the game. We had already figured this out from existing information, that characters have to join units at the start of the game in unit construction. Most people had been doing this already. The only time I hadn't is in the Biosanctic Brood Surge, where I would attach a Biophagus to a unit only after seeing my opponent's army. Then I would know if I wanted another Acolyte squad or a Metamorph squad to get the detachment bonus. This may be the full extent of the change, that rather than assigning characters later on, you assign them in the army construction step. Or it allows points values to be different depending on which unit the character is attached to. Add a Hospitaller to Battle Sisters, 50 points. Add her to Sacrosancts, 65 points. That's another option for balance in what Games Workshop wants to be the most balanced edition ever, with a focus on narrative and a focus on balance. As also suspected, each detachment has a logo associated. Some detachments will have more than one, or when building an army from multiple detachments, that means you'll get multiple symbols. Then you pick one of them to be your force disposition, capital letters. This is what they're good at, what they're going to be doing in battle. Taking and holding things, disrupting the enemy, purging the foe, priority assets, or reconnaissance. You pick one symbol when you're building your army, and then you cross-reference your chosen force disposition against your opponent to determine the mission, as we predicted. But this also means it opens it up more than we thought. With multiple symbols available, you could have the same army list and the same detachments and play against the same opponent who has the same army and same detachments, but by picking a different one of the 5 force dispositions available to you, you play a different mission. This would also suggest that there could be up to 25 missions available, though they too could be compartmentalized, though they too could be separated into separate subsections, so there are very familiar and samey ways of scoring victory points. Like if a reconnaissance force is facing a purge the foe force, the reconnaissance army might get victory points for being in all 4 table quarters. Whereas if they face a priority assets army, they still get victory points for being in all 4 table quarters. That's something that Games Workshop will tell us a little bit more about tomorrow. As long as these detachments don't do anything silly like let you put massive mutilators in rhinos, the detachments will be fine. Oh wait, that's something you can do right now. Yeah, 10th edition is done. See you tomorrow. Have a great day of 40k.